I recently got a text from a friend. This friend has a friend that recently got a title increase, like got a title promotion, but no additional pay, no pay raise, and asked if I'd chat with her about sort of advocating for herself and how to best position and like ask for a raise. First of all, I am thrilled that this is my brand. In the year of our Lord, 2023, we are not getting increased scope and no increased cash money, okay? And I am thrilled. I am thrilled that people want to talk to me about this. If I could get a bat signal, I would. Because if I do anything in this community and on this podcast journey, it's to ensure, first and foremost, that you don't lose your minds while getting everything you want out of corporate life. And that means getting your damn bread, getting paid for the work that you do, getting paid for the increased scope, the increased workload, the increased intellectual work that you're doing. As most of you know, and I've talked about this a lot, money has been at the center of most of my anxiety in my life. And it's because of so many factors. I've kind of avoided talking about money, like overtly. And in doing this, I feel like I have left a lot of money on the table. I think we all have. I think we all have kind of like, oh, cringe. I don't want to talk to my boss about a raise. And so we kind of just let 9 months pass. And that's 9 months of earning potential that we have lost. I remember I talked to one of my employees that really wanted stock in the company. And because of sort of the time that they joined the company, there wasn't really strict rules about who got it, how much. Like it was just sort of the Wild West. And then as soon as this person joined, there were restrictions, which is like totally unfair. But every single month that I couldn't negotiate stock for this employee was a month of vested stock lost. And so I think a lot of corporations and leadership forget this, that they're like, oh, we'll talk about that next month. We'll talk about that next quarter. When that is a tangible loss of money for you. Like talking about a raise 3 months later could potentially be thousands of dollars for you. Talking about stock options 3 months later is a tangible loss of money because you're not vesting for those 3 months in limbo. So even though leadership, I think, sometimes pushes out these conversations kind of flippantly, it matters. And you need to sort of speak up about that to ensure that you're getting paid. So again, companies are really benefiting from our awkwardness around money. It keeps it this sort of taboo thing. So you are less likely to ask for a raise. You are less likely to negotiate your salary. You are less likely to push getting your stock options earlier. And nay, we are getting our bread, fam. We all are. We're getting paid for the work that we do. I have been primarily driven by money my whole entire career, which, as we've discussed, isn't the greatest. But in the last 6 years, I have tripled my salary. I have painfully learned to be shrewd in my negotiations because, again, I've been so centered and money motivated. I think about this because our cats are very food motivated. That just made me think of it. I'm very money motivated. So in the last 6 years, I have done a lot to increase my earning potential because that's all I've been focused on. But I have learned to be shrewd about my negotiations. I have learned when to ask, when not to ask, what skills and projects to pick up, which things are going to be most visible, which things are going to be, the best lifters of my reputation, of my career, of my, perception at the company. I have learned how to be more visible. I've learned how to make the ask, how to make a very direct ask, and to not avoid talking about money because it feels weird. It feels awkward. So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about money. We're diving headfirst into this sort of intricate world of money and our relationship with it. We'll kind of explore the significance of money in our lives, challenge our core beliefs, our preconceived beliefs, carve a path forward toward financial empowerment, let's say. And along the way, we'll also delve into the art of asking for a raise or negotiating your salary and talking about strategies to advocate for yourself with confidence, with directness, and with grace. So remember, throughout all of this, it's okay to have questions. It's okay to seek knowledge. Don't let the fear of not knowing hold you back. I certainly don't know everything, and I'm a far cry away from an expert, from a financial expert. So please be gentle, as I truly believe the best way to break down this barrier is to show up with what you have. Show up with vulnerability and gentleness with ourselves about what we know and what we don't know. So first, why are we so weird about money? Why is it so uncomfortable? Why does it feel awkward? Everyone has a money story. Your money story describes all of the personal feelings, values, and beliefs you hold about money, which you do. Even if you haven't, let's say, purposefully crafted your story or intentionally or with consciousness, you have crafted values and beliefs and stories about money. The key to the money story is to be honest with yourself and to get a better understanding of how you have framed your story. Your journey often defines the way you think, the way you speak and manifest money. And it is often the framework for how you spend, how you invest, how you approach money in general. So the first step, tell your story. Second step, look for clues in the story to see if they can give you an indication of how your experiences have influenced your current relationship with money. For me, part of my story, I was raised in a Mormon family where we were taught that all debt was bad. Any and all debt. You cannot have debt. You just can't have any. So my family didn't have debt, which is like great job, parents. But my parents also didn't have credit cards. And I am just now having bad credit from a Gap credit card I signed up for in like 2007 roll off my credit report because I wasn't taught about credit. I wasn't taught about Sky Miles points on a Delta credit card. These things that, like, if managed well, can be a really great money builder. My parents didn't believe in student loans because that was a form of debt. And so I didn't go to the school I wanted to go to. I went to the school that I could afford, the school that my family could afford, the school that I had enough cash to pay for, which, really cut off some opportunities for me and influenced like a huge part of my life. And I talked about this before too, but I think it also was a huge part of my money story. I talked about this mini bar story of when I went to a hotel with my parents and my parents were like, do not touch the mini bar. Don't touch anything in the fridge. Don't touch anything in the mini bar. And this fear that generated in my body about this mini bar spelling my financial ruin, that not having enough money meant that I couldn't access certain parts of the world, that I wasn't worthy of certain things. And if I wasn't careful and super vigilant, I would get myself into an expensive situation where I wouldn't be able to bail myself out. I wouldn't have funds to be able to fix it. I wouldn't have this emergency fund that I felt like a lot of my peers had, that if I couldn't afford to put gas in my car, I'd have to go sell clothes at Plato's Closet to put gas in my car. Like, this is sort of the trauma that I think has built a lot of my money story. You know how long it took me to order room service? Because also room service seemed to be this thing that was like, it's just way too expensive. I think I was 26. I think I was 26 when I ordered room service for the first time because, again, it makes you fearful. My money story had made me fearful. I read this article on bigthink.com. It's an article called Childhood Money Anxiety. Highly recommend it. Again, it's bigthink.com. But it talks about how psychologists have studied these kinds of patterns of belief that we hold about money. Studies have uncovered 4 broad patterns they call money scripts that can serve as a helpful framework for understanding the particular ways you and your family relate to money. The first one is money avoidance. This pattern describes a general belief that money is bad. Money makes you greedy. People who score high in this category might believe that there's a virtue in living without money, that wealthy people are greedy and otherwise immoral, and that they don't deserve money themselves. This group might also have trouble with overspending and sticking to a budget. This is one of the scripts. The next one is money worship. As the opposite of money avoidance, money worship is where people put money on a pedestal, believing it fuels happiness and solves most of life's problems. People in this group tend to be younger, have a relatively low income and net worth, and carry credit card debt. I think this was probably the closest money script that I had in my 20s. It was like, this is the key. This is the key to all of my problems. And if I just orient my entire being around earning more money, I'll be fine, I'll be safe, I'll be happy. The third is money vigilance. This tends to be the money script of the ultra wealthy. People in this group value a bargain. They don't spend above their means, placing an emphasis on protecting their capital. But while saving and frugality can be positive, an excess of vigilance may lead people in this group to suffer financial anxiety or a reluctance to ever spend it. I think my father is in this bucket where he's never spent money in his life, like ever. Money status is the fourth script. This is where people equate their self-worth to their net worth. Financial psychologist Dr. Brad Klontz told Big Think people in this group like outwardly displaying their wealth, and they're more likely to spend too much, gamble, and be financially dependent on others. I think living in Utah, I see this a lot in Utah. I think Utah is a very image-conscious state and an image-conscious culture. And so this sort of keeping up with the Joneses, who has the biggest house, who has the biggest car, who has the best boat, tends to be kind of this script, is like you're only as good as your money. And so the more you show your money, the better you are, the more worth you have as a human. So I think this is why we are so awkward and protective around money, because money is linked to status, which we instinctually feel protective of. How you feel about money is tied to your mindset and how you feel about your own self-worth. Whoa. Like, no wonder we're all so weird about it. Like, if this is sort of the only thing that we have to show and link to our self-worth, of course we're going to be so weird about it. Of course we're going to be protective of it. So the first place I want to start is sort of, what are your money beliefs, right? So think about your money story first. Like, what are all your experiences? What were you taught from your parents? What was your childhood like? What's your money story? And then what are your money beliefs? What are the beliefs that you have crafted, probably unconsciously, about money? Do you think wanting money makes you greedy? Like, that's a powerful belief. If you feel like money makes you greedy. Is money the root of all evil? Like, have you seen family fight about money? God, especially after the death of a loved one, I've been starting to see this in sort of my family and my peer group. Like, money gets weird. Like, especially when they're inheritances, or like, you know, your grandparents have a house. Like, who gets to live in the house for free? Who gets to have it? Like, it gets kind of gross. So do you think, you know, money causes people to behave badly? Do you think money causes people to act badly? Do you deep down think money is just bad? Do you think money is the only way you will be worthy? Like, think about that one. Think about this. Do you think that having your fancy car pulling up into your neighborhood is the only way that you're going to garner respect from your neighbors or your peers, or having, the fancy vacation to tell all of your coworkers. Like, is this how you garner worth? Do you think when people talk about money, it's distasteful or it's them showing off? Do you think asking for money makes you desperate? I see this a lot, especially with people that didn't grow up with money, hypervigilance around who they owe money to, like going on trips. This is the person, like, to the penny is making sure they pay you back every cent because they don't want to look, I don't know, desperate or poor or like they need help. Were you taught that you shouldn't talk about money because it's impolite or too bold? I think women especially are taught this, that like, oh, it's not polite to ask for a raise. It's not graceful. It's not, it's too bold. It's too big. It's too aggressive. I remember feeling that too when I was younger in my career, that was like, oh, asking for money, like, oh, too aggressive. You don't want to come across too aggressive. What is your plan to define yourself and build your self-worth within the context of money, but not by the money itself? So the questions that I sort of went through when I was trying to define this, because again, when I was in my career, like my entire identity was defined by my earning potential, how much I made and what my title was. And so I was like, well, who I am still within the context of money, right? But not defined by money itself. The 4 questions that I went through were, what do I want money for? How much is enough? Like, what is my goalpost? How much is enough? What is important to me in life? And how much is my time worth? This is a big one. How much is your time worth? What I think has been the hardest for me is bridging this gap between trying to separate myself from the society and from capitalism and from all this kind of like corporate stuff, but still realizing that I need to operate within that, right? I think so many people are like, oh, just leave. And it's like, I can't. We all have to live in this society. We all have to function. But I think it's important for us to define and accept what money is in our lives, but also have a very, very strong identity of who we are without that. And that was really difficult for me, of like, how do I introduce myself without telling people what I do or what my title is? What else am I bringing to the table? And the last thing that I went through was sort of what don't I know that I want to know more about financially? Like putting away the shame of not knowing, because a lot of people don't, and ask. I used this for a long time to help soothe my shame, because again, I grew up in an environment and that I wasn't taught about financial stuff. Like my financial literacy was 0. As soon as that Gap employee was like, do you want to sign up for the credit card and save 25%? I was like, yes. That sounds like an up and up situation. Doesn't sound like there's any consequences. Give that to me now. Because I wasn't taught these things. And so I entered the world. I entered my 20s and honestly, God, some of my 30s, not knowing things that I feel like a lot of people knew. So this tool that I used when I asked questions was, I would say, quote, I'm working on improving my financial literacy. Doesn't that just sound fancy? That's like, oh, this person isn't dumb. This person wants to improve their financial literacy. So like, and then I would ask my question or ask someone to explain something. And for some reason, this little caveat gave me enough self-worth to be brave enough to ask, hey, I didn't understand that. Can you explain it to me? And hey, sometimes you got to fake it. Sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. And using big words like financial literacy helps. So then, like, do it. If that makes you feel less shameful about not knowing something, use a caveat. But there is one caveat that I do not accept when asking a question or asking someone to clarify, okay? And it's, sorry, this is probably a stupid question. I hate that. Please, for the love of God, if you're listening to this podcast, stop saying, sorry, this is probably a stupid question, but, and then you go into your question. Please stop. Please stop. I hate this. It wasn't a stupid question. It's not a stupid question, but you put yourself down before anyone else was even thinking that. No one was thinking that. But I guess now they're thinking it. Like, as soon as you're like, well, that's probably a stupid question, but can you explain what a money market versus a CD is? Now they're kind of like, well, is it a stupid question? Like, you don't have to put that out there. You don't have to dress rehearse embarrassment and tragedy. So please, if you are asking questions because you don't know, please don't say that it's a stupid question, okay? So as I've gone through all of these exercises, this is where I've landed. Money is a necessary part of society, and it's not bad or good. It's an exchangeable resource. I want money, and that is okay. I want money for freedom, connection, and experience. Those are the three things that I want money for. So if things don't fit into those buckets, I don't need it. I don't want it, and I shouldn't allow myself to be pressured into buying them because so-and-so has it, or it's the cool thing, or whatever. Corporate life is the most efficient way for me to make money right now. It just is. But I don't want so much money that it becomes the only facet of my life. I think this is where I reached sort of my last role. Was it sucked every ounce of me, my time, my weekends, my nights, my emotional energy. And all I had time to do was online shop. All I had time to do was spend my money. And it was my only personality trait, and it was the only thing I had time for, rather than planting a garden or seeing friends or crocheting a bag. I also started to use this term, money comes freely and easily to me. The amount of time and effort and acrobatics I would go through to sort of save, optimize money often yielded me nothing. Like, I kind of felt like this crazy, I don't know, like accountant. I was like, okay, if I spend this and I get this, like trying to really be vigilant about all the pennies, it just made me miserable. And let's say you have a generous thought, like something, and I'll be really vulnerable here. Being generous isn't something that comes very, very easily to me. It's something that I admire in almost every single person that I know. My best friend, for example, is like the most generous human I've ever met in my life. And it's something that I aspire to be, but it's not my natural thought. Because of my money story, being generous is not my natural first instinct, but I want it to be. So I would oftentimes have these generous thoughts, and then I would panic. I would panic, and I'd be like, oh, how do I take that back? This is terrible. That's terrible. You have this generous thought, you act on it, and you immediately panic and just ruminate on that. It's not serving anyone. So instead, I'm trying to replace that with money comes freely and easily to me. That's the mindset that I'm trying to go into life with. Money comes freely and easily to me. And I don't need to over control every aspect of it. And I know this sounds a bit woo-woo. I know, like, somehow switching from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset is like, people think it's easy, or people tell you it's easy. I mean, it's really not. It really isn't. But it is a mindset. It's not circumstances. It's a mindset. which you have complete control over. So however you got to fix that mindset, do it. Try it. Worst case, switching your mindset helps your anxiety and suffering around money. Best case, it actually improves your tangible money situation. Like, what if? What if changing your money mindset to money comes freely and easily to me yields you more money? Try it. Why not? Why not try it? I would. I am. That's my mindset. So start moving through this process a bit. What is your money story? What are your money beliefs that you carry that you may not know? What is your money trauma? Like, hello, hotel minibar. That's my money trauma. Journal when these thoughts come up. Journal when you run into things like criticism or judgment or an intrusive thought, a big fight about money, an awkward moment, so that you can start to identify patterns into how you react when money comes up in your life. Start to identify these things. They're important for you to know, and they're important for you to acknowledge so that you don't leave money on the table by avoiding money or over focusing on money. Start to separate your self-worth from money. Okay? You are worthy regardless of your title, regardless of how much money you make. You are worthy. And you need to start building that. You need to start building that. Like, let's say, I don't know, you drive a shitty car. You're still worthy. You're still amazing. You're still talented. You don't have to stretch yourself and buy this fancy car just to prove that you're worthy. Define what you want money for. For me, it was freedom, connection, and experience. Like, defining that really helps build a framework for how much money you want and what you're willing to give up for that money. And define how much is enough. I'm kind of here. I'm kind of figuring out how much I would need, like, on a monthly basis to feel all those things, right? To feel freedom, to feel connection, to feel experience. But I'll give you an example if you don't define this, okay? When I worked at Qualtrics, they started to come out with, like, maybe 2 or 3 years into my tenure at Qualtrics, they started to come up with these pay bands that were like, okay, and levels. So everyone at the company was leveled between like 1 and 10. 10 was like CEO, 1 was like an entry-level employee. And then all of these levels had pay bands associated, which is like, great. Most companies have to go through this. It's painful, it's shitty, but it is what it is. But I remember finding out that if you had an MBA, and in this example, an MBA from Stanford, there was one specific person that had an MBA from Stanford and just got skyrocketed to level 5. And level 5 got $125,000 a year as their salary. Now, this was like, 2013? $125,000. I was like, what would I do with all that money? What would I do? I would buy a house. I would buy all these cars. Like, I couldn't imagine making that much. I couldn't imagine having that much extra disposable income. I mean, now, 10 years later, 125 isn't a lot. Like, it is a lot, but it's not like what I thought it was, where it was like you could buy anything in this world and you'd have money left over. Defining how much is enough is important for you, and not just one time. You got to constantly kind of be evaluating that so that when you come up with like new job offers or choosing to take some time off or what have you, you have a better framework, and that your number isn't just more, which was my number for the majority of my life. Okay, now it's time to talk about how to get that bread. I want to talk about how to ask for a raise. So again, please do your money work, okay? Do your money self-work first. But I want to talk about some kind of practical ways to advocate for yourself financially. Asking for a raise. The very first thing I want you to do is check your mindset. There is so much fear around having this conversation. There is so much fear in asking for a raise. And my question for you to check your mindset is, what is the worst thing that could happen? And you may tell yourself, it's like, oh, well, my boss will think I'm greedy. I'll get fired. There'll be retaliation. The CEO will just blow up and fire me on the spot. Like, no. The worst case is that you just don't get it, which is exactly where you are right now. So there really isn't a downside to asking for a raise, okay? There's only upside. So whatever you want is on the other side of that 3 seconds of fear. You just got to push through. Push through those 3 seconds of fear, and you're not going to wind up any worse than you are now. It's not like they're going to be like, wow, you asked for a raise. We're going to pay you less now. Like, God, the audacity. We're going to take $5,000 off your salary. Worst case, you're not going to get it. Best case, you're going to get it. You're going to get the raise. If you have gotten a promotion in scope or title or responsibility, and you didn't get a raise, like, fuck that. Fuck that. No good. That is no good. You are getting paid less. If you have accepted more responsibility and not more money, you are actually getting paid less now. So I know there are politics in the workplace where you're like, okay, well, they're giving me this big opportunity, and if I prove myself, then maybe I could ask for a raise. Fine. I disagree, and I would ask that you ask for a raise. But let's say you're trying to make it part of your career pathing and there's a strategy. Fine. Set a time limit. And God, please stick to it. Like, if you're sort of saying, okay, my boss promoted me to VP but didn't give me a raise, fine. But set a time limit, 3 months. 3 months of acting at the VP level before you're asking for your commensurate pay for the level in which you're working now. Okay, so when you're negotiating a raise or advocating for yourself, there's a couple of kind of tactical things. Number one is how to ask. Okay, I know this is super weird. It's intimidating. And so some of the ways that I have asked to approach the conversation, I love this one. I'd like to revisit my compensation. That's an easy one. That's an easy one where it actually doesn't feel that scary. I'd like to revisit my compensation. Use that. Other ways to ask. I want to talk about how I see myself growing at ABC Corp or growing and progressing within the marketing team. If seeking a promotion that will hopefully come with a raise, say things like, I want to talk about the next step for me and how I can progress from manager to senior manager. Like, be direct. Ask for what you want. When asking for a raise, I would like to revisit my compensation so that my salary better reflects my contributions. I'd like to revisit my compensation so that my salary reflects my increased scope. Like, again, if you're one of those people that accepted more responsibility and didn't get a raise, like, you now need your salary to reflect what you're doing now, which was different from what you were hired to do. So you should revisit your offer. Revisit. And I love revisit because it's just so non-confrontational. Just want to revisit. Just want to chat. One of the things that I used too was because I actually didn't know when I became a VP, I didn't know what the salary market value was at the company or with my role. And so I just said, I'm joining a new peer group and I'd like to be closer to where my peer group is at. And that really puts their feet to the fire. If you say, like, I'd like to be close to my peer group, you can't say things like, I want to make as much as Bob makes. You can't say that. But if you're like, oh, well, I'm in the executive VP peer group I'm in the director peer group. I'm the senior manager peer group. I'm in the principal product manager peer group. I'd like to be close to where my peer group landed compensation wise, because that automatically tells that person that they cannot get away with paying you less than someone else that's doing the same job. And it's kind of like politely saying that you know, and you know that they know. So I like that one too, that it's like, just regardless of how much you're making in your market value, if you're doing the same work as a peer, you should be paid kind of close to what that peer is making, right? Before you ask for a raise, build your case. You have to sort of have this why. Because your middle managers oftentimes, and your manager, don't actually control the budget of the company, so they're going to have to ask someone else for it. So you got to make it really easy for them to build a case for you. One thing that I love that someone told me early in my career was, do one big thing a quarter. That's enough. That's enough to build your case. One big thing a quarter. Then you're not drowning in like trying to grab 19 things this quarter. One big thing is enough, and make a big deal out of it. Like, be visible about it. Talk to people about it. Show your work. Keep track of your past achievements. If you do not have a Google Doc or a note or whatever of your achievements, do that now. Do that right now. If you're driving, don't do that right now, but do that right now. Do that as soon as you can. Have a running document of all the things that you've accomplished and achieved. I did this, and I tried to update it every 2 weeks, because you kind of forget all the great things you did. You really do. Let me pull it up, actually. Let's see. Q3 2019. Created a company-wide reference guide with 19 pages and 21 pieces of sales enablement. Launched a new website. Launched new product positioning. Built the go-to-market plan for product, the product launch process for product. Launched the nationwide install program and IT partner certification program, and had 40% of partners certified. Like, write these things down. Every single time you have a win or a big project, write it down. Keep a running list, because you will forget. Numbers are best. Metrics are best. Like, increased website visits by 30%. Decreased platform spend by 25%. Like, these are best, but they're not all. If you led a very complex project with tons of stakeholders, that's a big thing too. So again, you have to have some metrics, but they're not everything. And so much of business work is like kind of intangible. So write down everything. Write down everything. What not to do when asking for a raise that many people have brought to me. Don't bring up personal reasons. I had somebody ask for a raise because they were buying a house. Lord help me if this is you, okay? I do. I am rooting for you. I'm so excited for you to buy a house. But if that is the reason you're bringing to your boss of why you deserve a raise, no, stop that right now. Cost of living. Again, not a thing. Don't just say I need a raise because cost of living has increased. You do, but that's not a way to get your raise. Don't always wait for the annual review period. I know tons of people that are like, well, reviews are happening in January. I'll ask then. And I know some companies that are more mature have baked processes. Like, you actually cannot get a raise until 18 months have passed. I understand that. But that doesn't mean you can't start the conversation. Don't wait to start the conversation. Okay? Because unfortunately, if you wait till January, your boss has probably already scoped all the raises for your team, and then you're coming in late. So start asking a year to 6 months before the annual review cycle. Start asking about your career progression. Start asking about the next step in your career for you. Start asking about how to progress to the next level. And at a smaller company, if you're at a smaller company, there are no rules. So just ask. If there are smaller companies that are, let's say, less than 500 employees, no rules, none. So ask. Ask now. Get your bread while it's bread season. Small companies are just constantly handing out bread. So get your raise. When making your case, think about what's in it for your boss. Like, make it easy for them to make the case. So consider the timing, right? You probably don't want to ask your boss for a raise right after there was an all hands about budget cuts or tightening up budgets. Like, that's not a good time. That's not going to make it easy for your boss to go to the cranky CFO and ask for your raise, okay? But maybe after like a record-breaking quarter. That is high time for companies that they're just riding high. So that's a good time to ask. Prep your boss. Like, grease the skids a bit. Like, think about setting a date for when you want to make the salary ask. And maybe 3 months before that, have a couple of one-on-ones leading up. Like, you don't want to just bamboozle your boss and be like, hey, I need 20K or I'm leaving. Like, start thinking about these conversations about your career progression, what you want to contribute, how you're invested in the long-term success of the company and want to make an impact. People love that. And it's a way for you to say, I am committed. And now I'd like to talk about what I can contribute so that I can get more money. Start laying the groundwork for your boss. Figure out your number. Unfortunately, you're going to have to probably give a number, a real number, not just like, oh, I just want a good raise. You probably are going to have to ask for a number. So one thing that I always use is this either OTE, so on target earnings, or total comp, because there are many ways that you can get paid that is not your salary. So think about sort of like, okay, well, I'd like to land at X dollars total comp. And then that gives some flexibility for your boss. I was like, okay, I actually can't get you there in your salary, but I did negotiate some more stock options for you. Or I did negotiate your bonus to be increased by 5%. Like, give a broader number that encompasses more in your total package. When making the ask, be direct but firm, but with a smile. And this is a big one, especially for your anxious people. Allow for some silence. When you're having the difficult conversation with your boss, when you're in the moment, your anxious energy wants to just fill all the empty spaces. And so you make the ask and then you talk more. Do you ever do that? Where you're like, well, I'd really like to see myself at, $15,000 more. And then you keep talking about why you want that and why you deserve it. And you just keep rambling on. Allow for some silence. This is the key to negotiation. You don't need to fill space. Let your manager fill that space. And the longer that awkwardness and that silence persists, the more your manager is going to want to fill space. And hopefully that allows your manager to say yes, or yes, but, or yes, and. The last thing I'll say about this is negotiating a raise with another outside job offer. This is risky. Now, I have seen a lot of people successful with this, but it's usually people that were going to legitimately take the job. They weren't just sort of dangling it in front of their boss to hopefully negotiate it for a raise. These were people that were going to leave, that made the decision, and then they came back with this crazy offer, and you're like, okay. Because the biggest risk is that you actually didn't want to take that job. You dangle it in front of your boss, and they say, okay, leave, and you're like, oh shit, now I gotta leave. So it's risky. It's risky. I wouldn't recommend this path. But unless you're, I don't know, gonna take the other job and then they give you this big offer. Again, I don't love taking counter offers because there was a reason you took the call from the recruiter anyway. But anyway, that's my last thing I'll say about that. Okay, moving on to negotiating your salary. So with all of the turnover in corporate life, a lot of you may be negotiating salaries soon of new roles, of new jobs, of new companies. Every situation is unique. It's high stakes. It's awkward because of the aforementioned money stories and money trauma. And society has made it weird. So I'm not going to be able to kind of cater this to like every specific situation, but here are a couple kind of general tips that I've used in my career and for people when they ask for advice on how to negotiate their salary or negotiate their package. Harvard Business Review, I actually love this one. Number 1, Harvard Business Review recommends don't underestimate the importance of likability. This sounds really basic, but it's crucial. People are going to fight for you only if they like you. I love this one. It wasn't on my list, but when I read it on HBR, I was like, oh, this is a good one. Anything that you do in negotiation that makes you less likable reduces the chances that the other side will work hard to get you a better offer. This is more about, this is more so about being polite. It's about managing some inevitable tensions in negotiation. It's asking for what you deserve without seeming greedy. It's pointing out deficiencies in the offer without seeming petty. And it's being persistent without being a nuisance, without being annoying. Negotiators can typically avoid these pitfalls by evaluating how others are likely to perceive their approach. So practice. Again, you have to be liked for people to go to bat with you or to bat for you. So practice. Practice your tone. Practice in front of the mirror. Practice with friends. Practice with a sounding board. Message someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, I want to bounce something off of you on how to negotiate my salary. Message me. I'm happy to talk to you about how to negotiate your salary and practice and how you come across. Because you may think you come across a certain way, and then other people may be like, well, that was an asshole. Like, you need to get some feedback on how you're coming across so that you have likability, so that the people will go to bat for you. This is a great one. Depersonalize the ask. So whenever you're asking for anything in your offer, say the company rather than you, right? So like if I'm emailing an HR manager and I'm like, is there any way that you can get me 5% more in my package? Don't say that. Say, is there any way that ABC Corp can get me 5% more on my offer? Depersonalize the ask. It's not the HR recruiter or the hiring manager that's giving you this money. It's the company. So talk about the company giving you this rather than the person. Depersonalize the ask. Don't play coy. Employers are only going to offer a bigger package if they think you're going to accept it. So don't be like aloof. Don't be like, well, I've got a lot of other offers. You have to make sure that your intention is known. Employers, again, are only going to offer a bigger package if they think you're going to accept. The best, read annoying, but the best recruiters use this tactic. If I can get you XYZ, will you accept today? Don't play coy. Don't play I have lots of other offers. This will likely backfire because it doesn't sound like you'll take it. So why go through the rigmarole of getting you a bigger package? And trust me, there is rigmarole. Having been a hiring manager and hiring lots of people in my day, there's rigmarole. Don't underestimate it. The recruiter has to talk to the hiring manager. The hiring manager has to talk to finance. They have to look at the budget. They have to get their boss's approval. They have to get their CEO's approval. They have to get their CFO's approval. They put their neck out on the line for you. So don't play coy. If you're negotiating hard on an offer, your intention to take it has to be known. If you are planning to mention all the options you have as leverage, which is an option, you should balance it by saying why or under what conditions you would be happy to forego those other options. So if you're going to say something like, well, I actually do have a lot of other offers that I'm considering, but if you can get me 30% more on my salary plus this 5% bonus, I would be happy to forego all those options and accept this offer. That is a way to talk about your options. It's a way to not play coy, but still let them know that you've got other offers, other competitive offers. Consider the whole package, the whole deal. Negotiating your offer is not the same as negotiating your salary. I love the OTE and total comp. You can negotiate a lot of your total comp. Okay, let's say usually there's base salary, some percentage of bonus, company equity, a signing bonus, a moving bonus, and maybe vacation days. Like those are 5 things that you could negotiate as part of your offer. I will say this, you can negotiate some of those things, but not all of those things. Okay, so do not try to negotiate all 5 things because you're not going to get that and you're going to look super greedy. Pick 3 of the 5 that you want to negotiate. And when you negotiate those things, do it at the same time, for the love of God. Making an ask and then getting it, again, after much rigmarole, and then making another ask, you are absolutely going to annoy the person on the other end. And you're going to lose your likability. I had this at a person that we were trying to recruit. And I had to go to bat with my cranky CFO about getting a salary increase. And then I got it with some pain. I let the candidate know, and the candidate came back asking for equity. And I was like, God damn, why didn't you just ask me in the first place so that I could go to the table with all of your asks at the same time? Because now I don't want to go back. Now you've lost my willingness and desire to go to bat for you because you didn't respect my time and the rigmarole that I'm going through for you. So if you're going to negotiate things, do it at the same time. If you don't, you're going to come across annoying, and honestly, you're going to come across unorganized, which is also not winning you any points. Being disorganized is also not winning you points. I think this is an important one. I am not saying that you should be dishonest. I do not think you should be dishonest when you are talking about negotiating your salary. But you don't always have to say what you are currently making. You don't. Recruiters can ask, like, well, how much are you making right now? Oh, well, I'd actually really like to, as I'm exploring this new opportunity, I'd like to land close to 175 OTE. I'd like to land at 175 total comp. You don't have to say what you're currently making. You just say what your salary expectations are. It's a tough market right now, especially for tech and corporate employees. Many of you have been searching for months, or the better part of the year. And you may just want a job. And I totally understand that sentiment. And I would also struggle with the urge to take anything and to not negotiate just to not rock the boat. But remember, this company invested a lot of time and resources into vetting you and making you an offer. And there is significant investment they would have to put in to say, I don't know, fuck it, let's look for another candidate. So you can negotiate your salary, even if you are desperate, even if this is the only company that has offered you a job in the last year, you still can negotiate your salary. There is room for negotiation, and I do understand the market is tough, so there may not be a ton of leverage and room for negotiation, but there is not zero room. So still continue to advocate for yourself because, again, this company went through a lot of effort to get to this stage. And they're not going to just, at the first sign of you asking for more salary, just going to be like, never mind. We all have a money story that shapes the way we act, the way we spend, the way we buy, the careers we choose, the way we negotiate or don't negotiate for raises or a better offer. Our unique money stories dictate so much of our lives, and yet we don't explore or dissect any of our core beliefs. We just sort of go into life not knowing these things about ourselves. And a lot of our core beliefs about money have a lot to do with shame. Shame about talking about it, shame for wanting money, shame for not knowing about money, shame around how money reflects our social status, our social standing. It again can be something that makes you feel unworthy. It's something that can make you feel other in society. I know the money or the lack of money has made me feel this way many, many times in my life. And shame is a powerful feeling. It's one of the most powerful feelings, and it keeps us from our best interests. It makes us feel safe, but in reality, it's damaging. Shame can be keeping you from getting paid your fair wage for hours worked. Money doesn't have to be weird. It doesn't have to be awkward. It's a normal thing. And like, isn't that what we're all doing? Isn't that what work is? We're working to get paid. All of us are, including your CEO. They are working to get paid. None of us are just working because we altruistically love the company mission and getting paid is just a bonus because we love work so much. No, we are working to get paid. And that doesn't make you greedy. And it can be an and conversation. It can be both. It can be, I care about the company, but I also care about the compensation I receive for my impact and my contributions. And that is natural. And that is a natural, recurring exchange in business. Money for hours worked. So take some time. Take some time to explore your core beliefs about money. Figure out your self-worth inside and outside the context of money. Figure out what you want. And for the love, go get it. Go ask. Advocate for yourself and make the ask. I personally hope for each and every one of you, financial independence, financial empowerment, and for not a one of you to get a scope increase without a raise. So thanks for being here. I'll see you next week.